Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Double on Radio Gamescast. This week, we've hit that time of the year. Episode number 38, the official first holiday special of the Double on Radio Gamescast.
Oh no.
Fine.
Oh,
As
no.
always, I'm your host,
First
Ryan.
annual.
I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm joined by my lovely cohort of interrupting co-hosts. Alex,
Hello.
Brett,
Hello.
and Wyatt.
Hi.
Alright. I see we're in that kind of mood today. So, there's been a lot of news this last week. A lot of news related to one very specific video game.
That has not caught a break for a single second.
And no one playing it's catching a break either, because man, the information keeps coming. So, we got some talk to have about Cyberpunk, but in addition, we've got some good vibes because it's the Christmas holiday special. So we're just going to be, after that, just talking about games we like. And actually, that don't have tons of controversy around them. So,
Or released on time when they were ready.
all right, Brett.
Now, you.
Now, it's
telling
the
the
holiday
truth.
episode.
God,
Save the
if you
negativity for when I
kept
say the
shaking your
negative
head.
headlines. We've
Brett
got
not
quite a
bringing
few
in
of them.
Positive vibes. I'm shocked.
All right, so we're just going to start with the Cyberpunk news because I think it's what's on the top of everyone's head. And there's also, while there's a lot of it, we can probably get through it relatively quickly because we already gave our opinions on the launch and everything. We don't need to do that all again. But the gist of it is that a couple days after our last episode, we learned Cyberpunk decided they were going to start issuing refunds on console to anyone who asked for one. The chief issue of this being that they did not consult the console makers before doing this, and the refunds had to be done through the console makers, so Microsoft and Sony. So, of course, Microsoft and Sony were none too happy about this. On Sony's end, the game is now removed and delisted from the storefront until further notice. And full refunds are being offered to everyone. On Microsoft's end, they've just expanded their refund policy to cover Cyberpunk, essentially, and that you can get the game refunded, regardless if you've played it or not, in the past bit of time. So, yeah, Cyberpunk broke sales records and is now probably breaking refund records. So, it's it's a situation.
Yeah. It's like, where do we even start? There's so much to say, like so much to get through.
Well, we're not even done with the Cyberpunk news yet, because
I know.
we have investor calls that we can listen to, where essentially the investors and developers are grilling the executives about like why these decisions were made, and they just don't have answers. Like, nobody understands what happened for the most part, and the devs are all on the same side of like these deadlines were never realistic. And we talked about it last time that the game, people think the game was in development for like 7 or 8 years, when in reality it was in development for closer to 3 to 4, due to when development on the actual game system started and not just the scenario writing and like concept planning. In the CG trailer, which is handled by different studios, like that's not done by the same people developing the game. So, reality is the game had less dev time than we
take
thought.
into account pre-production.
And pre-production is long.
Yeah.
That's also why most large studios that have yearly or bi-yearly releases have multiple sub-teams handling those releases, because it's far easier to have a team doing pre-planning and a team doing actual work on the previous entry while that's happening, to be able to facilitate that release schedule. It's like that's what Assassin's Creed does. It's what Call of Duty does. It's how you get those games out that often. It's not that you have one dev team make the same game every year. It's you have a team of different devs or sub-teams within one dev team that are working on different things. Yeah, that's the big confusion that a lot of people have had about like why the game released in this state. Is the reality is it was just the release window for the amount of features that were promised was not realistic at any point. And the delays were just kind of little band-aid fixes that really didn't work. Band-aid stuff that tends to not work in game development, as people have seen with like Anthem and many other launches, it's not a solution to issues.
Which explains why you have like the current sort of traffic system or the lack of one.
Yeah.
You know, like it really explains those kinds of like, why is there nothing here? Like
It's like, why is the open world not a GTA level thing? It's because the dev time was clearly not intended to be there, with the amount of time they had. So, yeah. That said, there is probably a lot of faith that CDPR will pull the game together at some point. Just when that point is really up in the air right now, and also we don't know currently. They stated before the game launched that their plans for DLC were a bunch of free DLC and then like a set of 2 expansions like The Witcher 3 had, which worked really well for The Witcher. But seeing as all of this has happened, I'm very curious to see where we are 3 months down the line of Cyberpunk, like if that's still a realistic thing to hope for or not.
I just need a little more money.
Yeah, like I mean, the thing with CD Projekt is that at least if they were a smaller dev team and this was their only game, this could have ruined them. Like, despite the fact that the game broke sales records, this could have been completely ruinous for any other dev team. But because CDPR also owns like GOG and everything, they have income from other sources.
Well, they also have so much goodwill leading up to this that I think is
Yeah, which they've
that
spent
is
now.
cushioning the fall.
That has now been spent, but
Yes,
they
It does-
it
What
up again.
But what I'm saying
fingers
is it
crossed.
cushioned the fall to a certain extent, and they don't have that anymore, obviously. But
Yeah.
I think they are riding on a lot of that at the moment. They're spending a lot more than is coming in terms of.
It's kind of redirected a lot of the outrage that probably would have been at the dev team to the investors and executives.
specifically, yeah.
So good for the devs. Still, people are still sending them like death threats and stuff, which is obviously don't do that. But yeah, it's a mess of a situation. I'm sure we will have more information next week.
How many times have we had to say that on this show? Just like
Every
don't send
episode.
death threats to people.
Every-
It's so sad.
It's an
that we have to,
important
like,
point.
It's the
No,
double
no,
one
we
way.
should look. Yeah, if it's happening, we should bring it up. But I'm just sad that we have to bring it up.
Yeah,
It's
this
yeah.
much, I hate it.
we might have a conversation about that at some point about like
I've been thinking
gamers
about that.
and toxic culture, but
Definitely.
that is certainly its own episode thing.
That's
So
gonna be
yeah,
a special.
It's also very negative.
yeah.
It's not the very
We're
not
keeping
holiday
it,
like.
keeping it holiday positive vibes.
I'm gonna need a lot of positive stuff before we get into that.
So yeah, CD Projekt Red is in a tight spot right now, and when the game will be back on Sony storefronts is super unclear. And like the biggest issue here is definitely that Cyberpunk was running pretty well, and by pretty well I mean it ran. I don't mean it ran particularly
Started.
well, but it worked on like Xbox One X and PS4 Pro.
Mm-hmm.
Really didn't work at all on the original series consoles, so it's in a state, and because they didn't release next gen versions, it's not an option for them to be like just remove the old version, because the version people are playing on PS5s is the PS4 version, so now people can't play the game on either if they wanted to get it digitally. People that did already buy the game can still play it and get updates. It's just not publicly available on the storefront until further notice.
And we may have talked about this a little bit last time we talked about Cyberpunk, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, the simple solution here is just release the PC version and maybe the next gen version, or maybe just like have it be available on next gen, because from what I understand, it runs a lot better on next gen, and then just delay, the PS4 and Xbox One version. And I
Yeah.
just feel like that would have been like people would have understood, where it's they just
That's probably an
they've been-
executive call that should have been made.
No, I know. So I guess I'm speaking whoever to whoever made that decision. It's like your CDPR. If you had said, "Look, we're going to release the PC version, but the base console versions need more time," I feel like most people would understand.
And they've also, I think the big reason, which we did talk about last time, is the holidays. Like, they can't miss out on this holiday. They can't.
Right.
They're not
Which is
willing
why,
to.
like, you have to release something. I kind of understand that. So release the PC version.
And also,
then-
that said, the reason that would be disastrous for console sales, but that makeup of the 8 million copies that Cyberpunk initially sold is leaning pretty heavily on the PC, because they have a really, really large PC following, just because they have their own storefront there. A lot of other reasons from how they've acted in the past with PC games.
Yeah, it's just
crazy amount of
they're
tech support that Witcher 3
Yeah,
had.
there's a big modding community too with CDPR. It's not as
Oh
big
yeah,
as Bethesda with that, but it's still a pretty present community.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they've always been mostly PC centric. Like their games have always been out on console. Well, not always, but their games have been out on console. But it's just when you think of CDPR, you think of PC. You don't typically think of
The
console.
reality is they probably could have afforded to not release the console versions
Oh yeah,
over
for
this
sure.
this winter. They would have missed out on sales, but that is what it is, and it would probably be a lot less disastrous than it getting constantly refunded and removed from storefronts. Which you can tell from CDPR's like stock price just plummeting.
What is
They're
it down
in
by
a rough
40%
state.
now?
Yeah, it's a lot. It is a very large amount, especially for like a 2-week loss in stocks, and considering that the game was so hyped up beforehand and had risen their stocks so high,
Mm.
it's a little bit of whiplash for them, I'm sure. But yeah, that's most of the Cyberpunk news.
Well, hold on. There was something that just came out recently that I did want to talk about. There is this horrible bug going around at the moment where if you pick up
Oh,
too
that's
many
right.
items, it will corrupt your save.
Yeah.
That happened to me.
Oh, did it really?
Yep.
Yeah, but it
Oh,
didn't. Well,
wow.
it didn't corrupt all the saves, and luckily, I save scum, and I will do that to the day I die.
Yeah, same.
Specifically for reasons such as this, apparently, that are now a thing.
Yeah, so
I've
the details
never
of that
heard
is
of that before.
if your save file reaches 8 megabytes or higher, which can happen if you pick up a lot of stuff and there's a lot of data being saved. Pretty commonly, like Skyrim save files can be pretty large after a certain point, so it's not surprising that Cyberpunk can get that large.
It's
So
all those
something is
cheesy
clearly
nuggets.
wrong with how they're handling saving. I don't know what that could be, but
Add it to the list.
I'm wondering if it's maybe like the game is saving in a set time frame, and if it gets too large, it just can't write that much data in that time frame. But
I'm getting this general sense of like there's a lot of just like resource prioritization issues going on behind the scenes because we had
Yeah.
talked about that. We had talked about that fix. Ben had mentioned that fix in that one's Reddit post, and I had done it right after the podcast episode had aired, and it it wasn't it didn't fix the entire game, but the frame rate
well,
was
actually, we have
noticeably.
news on that fix now. So that fix
Oh,
actually did nothing. What was happening is that the game had like a memory leak or something that was causing the performance to be worse the longer it was open. So what was
Ooh.
happening is people would close the game and then reopen it, and the game would be fixed because they restarted the game, not because of that file. So CDPR did confirm that that file actually did nothing in the latest release. It was just a leftover thing from
That is
testing.
interesting. That is interesting because like I did notice there were areas that did run better, like even because like I wanted to compare. Like I had played a section um before changing it, and then
Yeah,
that's
and what
interesting.
it could be is like they could be sneakily hiding that file did work at that point, and they turned it off now and just removed it. So that could be a thing, but I doubt it. From the way that it was stated in the patch notes they just released, is it makes it heavily sound like that fix never really worked, and it was just something with having to do with like your VRAM cache on your card getting caught up or something and needing to relaunch the game.
Interesting.
So yeah, we don't know for certain because obviously it's hard to we don't have hard data on that fix because there wasn't that many people who tried it. Maybe we will at some point, but it seems a little unlikely that it actually did anything right now. All right, so yeah, that's
Shows how much I know.
the extent of Cyberpunk news. Well, it's also that those patch notes came out right before this episode, so you would have had to have read them like I did, literally 10 minutes ago. So yeah, that's about it for the Cyberpunk news, at least for this episode. We're definitely going to be talking about it more. We have a games club planned about it that we'll do once enough of us have finished it. Yeah, well, there'll be more Cyberpunk talk and likely more talk that is a little more positive down the line, because I do think that at least those of us who have been able to play the game and not had a lot of issues, it's very fun. But
Yes.
that is something. It's a separate thing. All the issues are definitely super valid and need to be fixed.
But we want to save the Games Club episode for just talking about the game. I think.
Yeah, because
For the
we've
most
already
part, anyway.
we've done the issues to death at this point. So
Yeah.
all right, moving on. We got a few other small bits of news, and by small I mean it's not that small. Epic is doing another free games fest. So if you're listening to this podcast, you have about a week left of free games every day on the Epic Store. So go check that out if you haven't. Just free stuff. Why would you not participate in that?
It's kind of hard to argue.
Yeah, and people saying that they don't want to use Epic, like this is taking Epic's money. Epic is giving you free things that cost it money to do, so just take advantage of it. If you don't like the store, that's probably the best thing you can do. Yeah. So more negative news: Assassin's Creed Valhalla snuck in some XP boosts.
Wait,
Hmm.
what's bad about
Assassin's
that?
Creed Valhalla snuck in XP boost to the in-game microtransactions store.
Thanks, Ubisoft.
Because it went over so well last time.
Oh
So
my God.
they weren't there during the review period, and now they are there. So,
Come on.
and I mean, the thing that with this to me that's a little weird is that Valhalla feels a lot less egregious in the leveling systems than Odyssey did.
Odyssey?
Yes.
I'm not having to do tons of side content to level up, and it's really not that bad. So I'm curious as to why they exist in the first place here. I
So
don't
they
know.
can get money out of anyone who will bite.
The cynic in me says this was a plan they had, that they wanted to add this from the start, but they decided to wait for reviews. But the optimist in me is saying that this is probably added due to feedback that people had of the game just being super long, and maybe they wanted to add a way that people who want to rush through it can.
Yeah, with real money.
Exactly, which is weird to me because it's like you're now paying to remove content from a game that you paid for. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Ryan,
telling
I
them
agree
you
with
don't
the
want to
cynic.
play the game you bought.
Ryan, I
Well,
agree
yeah,
with the
well,
little cynic inside of you.
It's also one of those things where it's like, okay, if you have a fan base that is complaining that your game is taking too long, why not just patch it in the game?
I know, it's just
as like a permanent feature and not something
No.
you have to pay for.
No, Wyatt, pay more. Give
it's also
money.
weird because like
Give them money.
this game has options unlike Odyssey where you can enable instant kills of you can
Oh.
assassinate anyone.
Oh, shit.
There are options so that you don't have to deal with the leveling shenanigans nearly as much. So like it still just
Yeah.
feels weird of
I've wanted instant kills for so
it just
long.
doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. It's just such a weird thing for them to add after the fact. But yeah,
I know, because again, it just wasn't necessary. So it's like, well, why?
it's not necessary. The game already caters to really good difficulty options and had a lot of different variants on how you could change that difficulty. So I don't know. It's just
It's
a
not like
weird
they
choice.
didn't know what kind of reaction it would get. You know,
Yeah,
it's
this feels-
Ubisoft. They've been through this song and dance many times.
This feels like a
At this point.
Nintendo move related to something online. Like
A Nintendo move, you say? Well,
this is just a very strange decision. But yeah, I think we all obviously don't approve of this.
Nope.
But there's really not
not a bit.
much to say else about it because like we don't have any other news about it. People are mad about it, but
Yeah, it's just bad.
it's just an XP boost. Like, all right, sure. Moving on. We have some more Game of the Years from different outlets. So we do get some varied opinions from people, and Hades, proud to say, has won at least Polygon's Game of the Year. So clearly, at least one games journalist has good taste. Excuse me.
Took them long enough. My goodness.
Yeah, so there a lot of the Game of the Year stuff has finally happened, and more will be happening throughout January. We had a saga about Devotion, I believe it's a Chinese horror game that is an indie game that's gotten like a lot of Taiwanese, yes, that's right. Horror game that's gotten a lot of recognition for being very cool, and has also had trouble getting on any storefront whatsoever because of some beef between the developers and China, apparently.
Yeah.
It's hard
There's like
to know
there's, like,
exactly
one
why,
tag.
because the reasons given for the game not being on storefronts are often different from the reasons that people think they're not on storefronts.
There's a lot of things we can go into of why a game from Taiwan is not allowed in China, but this is not a history podcast.
Yeah, it's like this is a super complicated issue that would take a lot of research to really know. So I recommend looking into this yourself if you're interested. But basically, Devotion was almost confirmed to be on GOG. Now, the important thing there is the almost, and that the Devotion devs were submitted to cert and everything for GOG, but had not actually been accepted yet. So it's not like GOG accepted and then removed them. This is a tweet from the devs that they were on GOG before they actually got accepted, but they were pretty certain they were gonna be. So I would not super heavily blame CDPR for this because I think their hands are kind of tied in what they can do about this. Because I'm betting this is another executive call of we can't have a game that has a risk of our Chinese investors getting angry. So yeah, Devotion was going to come to GOG, and then CDPR released a statement saying due to like backlash from certain people, it's not going to be on GOG anymore.
Didn't they say specifically gamer backlash?
Yeah,
They did
it was
say
specifically,
gamers, which
is weird because I don't think there was.
No, they
There was
needed
none.
another
There was
reason,
none.
so they
Not
Yeah,
have to
so
say,
I'm betting it was investor backlash and not gamer backlash.
we are
They
your
got gamer
businessman.
backlash afterwards, but,
Yeah,
but
they're-
not beforehand.
So CDPR
They got gamer
again not
backlash
catching
from
a
the
break.
decision.
They're having a rough week, and sometimes you need a rough week to slap you awake.
It all is just so reminiscent of when Fallout 76 came out, and just like the game came out and it wasn't just a buggy mess, there was also just like just fumble after fumble post release, and it's just feeling very similar at the moment.
But
I don't know.
you know why this is still it it's getting definitely in the ballpark of 76, but you know why it's still
It's not nearly as
1000
bad.
why it's still 1000% better? No microtransactions.
Yeah, no, and it's a good game underneath too. I mean, I'm not saying that they're the exact same situation, of course. It's just it's reminiscent of that in a
it's
lot of ways,
similar.
which is
Yeah.
interesting.
All right.
Unfortunately.
So again, more negative news. We have a lot of negative news this week. EA Play was meant to come to PC Game Pass on December 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, that didn't happen. So what the update they've given is that it's planned now to come in early spring. This is one of those situations that I'm just like, this is really weird and feels very
Yeah.
scummy on the side of EA because the heavy implication from the statement Microsoft released is that they had no control over this. So the leading theory right now is that EA likely is decided to postpone this until after the holidays so that they could keep holiday sales up on PC for their their winter sale. Which is a pretty sound reason for investors and the people at EA that want to make money, obviously. But it's super scummy for all the people that had been given that date and were looking into Game Pass because of that. Not to say that Game Pass isn't worth it on its own, but this is definitely a scummy move. So we'll see how soon that gets rounded out, because I believe Game Pass already on console already includes
It does.
EA Play if you have Game Pass Ultimate.
It does, yeah.
So it's just super confusing. The reason people have thought that might be different is because the EA Play on PC and the EA Play on console have different titles between them. Console has a more limited selection than PC does. So curious to see if that's something they're doing.
Trying to figure out the differences between subscriptions of Game Pass can be a little confusing if you're not if the terminology can be a little confusing at times. At least it is for me. Where it's
Yeah.
after 100%, wait, okay, that's this version, but only on this it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, it does.
Understandably.
But yeah, that's our EA news. EA doing scummy stuff. Really not too surprising, at least for investor related things. Slightly more interesting news, or not interesting, but positive news. Riot has confirmed that they're developing an MMO in the League universe. So people that like League of Legends, you've got an MMO at some point. Probably a ways away is my bet, because MMOs take a long time to make. But yeah, that's happening.
Actually pretty fun to hear. I might look more into that.
Yeah, because I used to play a lot of League, but kind of faded away from the game after, just it started to take up so much time to keep up with that I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I like the art style. I am not a big fan of their gameplay.
Yeah, I like it, MOBAs, but the amount of time it takes to play a single round of them is really started to make it hard for me to play them anymore because I really just don't like having to be locked into place for 45 minutes. So I'm happy to see that the characters I liked in League will be in a different medium now because I actually think League has a really interesting setting.
And
Yeah.
usually MMOs are a great place to expand upon settings and stuff like that because you have so much time
Yeah.
to world build.
I'm super
You don't-
curious as to if that's going to be like what the class system and that will look like. So I'm excited to see what they're doing, but probably a ways off. Yeah, that's most of our big news aside from, of course, Sephiroth landing in Smash Brothers.
Oh yeah.
And
Nearly
That feels like
impaling
a
Mario
million years
once
ago now.
again. First, the Grim Reaper killed Luigi, and now Sephiroth almost impaled Mario. What?
so we knew about Sephiroth last week after the Game Awards, but we didn't know what he would play like and how much homage they would be paying to him in Smash. And gotta say, Sakurai is clearly the biggest Final Fantasy VII fanboy because Sephiroth has probably the most effort put into him of any of the DLC characters by a
He's
lot.
just another anime sword boy. How could you possibly
But
say
Brett,
that?
he's the anime sword boy. He was the first video game anime sword boy.
He was an anime sword boy before it was cool.
He's the template for anime sword boys.
He and Cloud made it cool, pretty much.
Yep. Which is, it's funny
Big
to say
slab of
that because
metal?
people don't believe you, and then you're like, yeah, Final Fantasy VII is like a 20-year-old game. He's the edgy anime sword boy. He's the one that
What are you
started it.
talking
Yeah.
about? It came out last year.
All right. Thanks, Wyatt.
I'm this close.
You're
I am this
welcome.
close.
But yeah, so the interesting things here that are the news bits is that they finally got all the music from Final Fantasy that we were looking for, and they spoke to it in the presentation as to why it was so difficult. Is that the licensing in music that has appeared in multiple games and not just like Final Fantasy VII is a nightmare because like that music's also in Dissidia, it's in other games with crossovers, so they then have to get permission from every copyright holder to use that music. So it's not just like they can get it from Square Enix, they have to get it with any other studio that was involved at any point with something using Final Fantasy VII music,
If
which is a
there's
lot of
any-
people.
If there's any video game that really puts producers to work,
Mhm.
it's Smash Brothers.
Yeah, Smash
Yeah.
Brothers is, I don't know how they've managed to do it. But yeah. And then the really cool thing, Sephiroth got his own limited time game mode. By the time you're listening to this, you probably have like 10 minutes left to go play it.
Oh,
I think this comes out on the day that it is going away. So yeah, Sephiroth got his own game mode that is a like really cool boss fight against him. It goes into this unique menu with Final Fantasy style menu stuff. And then you fight him on the new stage. And if you beat him, you unlock him early, which is just a super fun thing. It's like if you beat the boss, you can play the character in the stage. So it's really cool.
I kind of wish that was more like standard for unlocking new Smash characters. I don't know. It's a
wait,
cool.
what do you mean? Isn't that how it was done? You have to defeat a character before
Well,
you can
yeah,
play
but
them.
In
just
World of
in
Light,
more
that's
of
how
these
it
like
worked.
unique
Um,
ways of doing it, I suppose.
yeah, I think the reason for this,
the DLC guys.
yeah, in the
Yeah,
DLC
yeah.
guys, they spoke to it again in that presentation of it's just super hard to do. And Sephiroth probably got this treatment because the team really, really liked him. Is my bet. Like, I don't think there's another character they would have done this for.
Yeah.
Because it
He is
really
a
sounded
boss
like it was a lot of work for a game mode that's going to be here for 5 days and then go away forever.
Well, if there's anyone in the games industry that doesn't work overly difficult or hard, it's obviously
Sakurai.
the people who make
Definitely
this.
Sakurai.
Exactly.
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 Sakurai, go take a nap, please.
Please, God.
All right, yeah, that's our news. That's all the big stuff, unless anyone has little things they want to talk about. But yeah, that's the big news. Aside from, again, CDPR now has hostile staff, but that was kind of implied with the rest of what we talked about,
Yeah.
that their devs are a little angry. But yeah, that's the state of CDPR right now. So on that note, we're gonna move into more positive territory with the Double on Radio All Reliable Award. So what this is for all of you. This is for everyone both listening and participating in the podcast right now. This is an award. Just come up with a game that's your old reliable. What game do you go to when you just want to relax? Just want to have some fun. Just enjoy yourself.
Interesting.
Ooh.
I'll go ahead and start so you guys have some time to think. I think for me, it's less of a specific game and more just Monster Hunter in general. It's always a game I find myself going back to, and I don't play it for very long amounts of time. And then once every like 2 or 3 years, I'll go back and play Monster Hunter. And it's just a great time. I think Pokemon's that for a lot of people. Just that kind of franchise,
I can hop in here. For me, I mean it's a relatively new game for it to be like, Old Faithful, but throughout the entire year that it's been out, I just Modern Warfare is like a multiplayer game that I'm always playing in addition to, whatever else I'm playing. Like whether it's a new game, it's like, yeah, I'll hop on and play like an hour or two of like, multiplayer and stuff, just because I think it's such a well-rounded game now with so much content, so much high quality content as well. And yeah, that's just kind of like my go-to multiplayer. Relax. I'm done with story for now. Let's shoot some people, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, well, I have to say I am the exact opposite of Wyatt on that. Because I'd say that my old reliable is going back onto the topic of Nintendo now, the Professor Layton puzzle games,
Oh, that's a
which
good
I
one.
mean they're puzzle games. They have a set amount of logic puzzles, and they have just a really good story and music to them. But you'd think that would get old after a while. Not if you're me and you have a really bad memory.
Ah,
That's fair.
No, those puzzles are new every time.
All right, Brett, you're in the hot
Yeah,
seat.
I'm like,
lovely music and atmosphere.
I'm torn between two. One of them is very like I'm kind of surprised no one else said this, but like Minecraft is just like the perfect game of just like, man, I don't have to do anything. I have no worries right now. I'm just gonna make something, just gonna build another house. And you know what? I might never play this world again, but it's just always like it's just such a chill time, and there's so much stuff that you can do. You can sink
Yeah.
1 minute into it and get bored, or just put a few hours in. It doesn't matter. And then the other one, I kind of lean more into the. I don't really care about the story anymore. I just want to shoot people. And Ace combat games have a lot of replayability, and they're very fun. So I just kind of turn my brain off and fly the plane as fast as I can into other planes and make them stop.
Make them stop. That's a good way of putting it.
Make them stop.
Make them stop.
make slow them down.
You just stop their engines and they slowly get out of the screen. Nothing bad happens to them after that.
And
They're just going on a little break.
and
They've
your
been flying
funny
around a
score number
lot.
goes up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, good answers all around.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And that takes us to the rest of the podcast, which is just happy vibes. It's holiday
Yeah.
time. We're taking a
Oh.
break from all the crazy intense discussion about whether or not game mechanics are ethical or good.
Oh,
And we're just going to talk about things we like. So, who wants to start?
Are we're just talking about games in general, or are we just keeping it real, just vague and non-specific, or
I
Wyatt,
thought we were talking about stuff that we've been playing
just a we like?
recently.
Yeah. Well, the implication is it's things you like that you've been playing recently.
Oh, okay. I can yeah, I'll start us off. I've been playing No Man's Sky recently. I think I've brought it up a couple of times just because I've been playing it more recently. Just because the amount of consistent updates has been so impressive that like and they're all really cool. There wasn't one update where like, okay, I need to get back in. But I watched the most recent one, which was the next gen upgrade, right? And I just thought to myself, I was like, wow, like they're still updating this game so consistently, and that's what made me come back to it. It's just there just seems to be no signs of slowing down in terms of updates, and it's really great now. Like I enjoyed myself a bit when I started playing around when Beyond came out, or was it Next? It was one of the two. I don't remember off the top of my head. And then I just picked it up again recently, and they've added so much to it. And there's more interesting creatures. There's more interesting fauna or flora rather, and just more interesting planets. More things to do. An interesting storyline that I didn't really partake in the first time, and I'm doing it more now. And it's been having a blast with it. So
Yeah, that's good. I
yeah.
know I also rejoined the No Man's Sky train when Next was announced, not when it came out, and had a lot of fun
Mhm.
with it for like the month that I kept playing it. And I'm definitely planning to go back at some point, but a lot of things to do right now, so got put on the
Yeah,
back
which
burner.
is
But
which is stark contrast to when it first released.
Yeah, really.
yeah,
What do? You mine
I think
for
it's
resources.
and just because we had the Game Awards recently, I feel like it's won like best ongoing game several times, hasn't it?
yeah, it has. I think 2 years running, and maybe more. Actually, Warframe might have won it last year.
And
Warframe
it
won
is,
Nice.
1 year. I don't remember if it was
but
last
it's
year or 2 years ago.
deserved. Like it
Oh,
doesn't feel
absolutely.
like it's always deserved every time it wins an award similar to that. It's
Because
like,
like I
no,
feel like
that's
the big three games people always mention for best online, like recurring or most updated, are always like Warframe, Path of Exile, and No Man's Sky, because those are the
Mhm.
three that are doing it right.
And Minecraft is getting a lot of updates as well, and it shares some similarities to that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but I think
no,
Minecraft has a lot of people that maybe aren't always as happy with it.
Yeah,
that's true.
because the updates
Whereas the
kind of
others are pretty
vary.
universally liked.
But bees, Ryan.
Bees.
Yeah, but mods had those like 4 years ago. A
Yeah,
lot of the content that gets added to Minecraft has existed for a very long time.
and like when it gets added officially, it's just kind of like half baked compared to how like crazy the mods go with it, and they also
Oh,
take
so
a really long time.
it's like whenever there's a new iOS version of iOS, it's the same thing where it's like, yeah, we've been able to jailbreak a feature like this for a really long time, except it's not nearly as
I'd almost put it
open
as like
open
the
source.
iOS versus Android stuff of like regular Minecraft with no mods is very streamlined and very accessible for the most part. But once you start
Mhm,
adding mods, you get like that Android feature list of if you're willing to put the time in, there's a lot more you can do with a lot of it, but you have to
mhm,
put the time in.
mhm. But I will say, going back to No Man's Sky, if you're one of those people that's still on the fence of like, okay, is it good enough yet? It is definitely a good time to jump in. And I think there's going to be very few people, unless obviously if you're not into that like survival crafting, kind of thing, because it is very much that still. It's way less obnoxious than it used to be, but it's still very much that. If you're okay with that sort of thing, I think it's 100% like, you know, good to go in terms of like a recommendation from me at least.
Yeah.
It's a
And
good
I mean, if you're not into that survival crafting thing, No Man's Sky probably isn't your game anyway.
Oh,
So
of course. But I even say that as I'm someone who isn't into that. Like I never really got into things like Rust, or I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not even into Minecraft all that much, but I feel like the sci-fi setting with this one, and also just I gotta praise the music for a second, and like and just like the I think the setting, the cool aesthetic, and some of its features is really interesting to me, even though I'm not usually a fan of like survival crafting
yeah,
kind
I
of
get
thing.
that.
So
But
yeah, I would recommend
I
it
think
to
I'm
some
almost the
people who even
opposite.
aren't into it.
Whereas I like the survival crafting stuff to a degree. But
Mhm.
I don't like the sci-fi setting isn't a huge attractor for me. It's more the exploration aspects of it, which I think could be done in any genre, but No Man's Sky, at least now, does like the procedural generation really well.
And it's got some cool because you can build different kind of settlements and buildings and stuff now, and it's got some cool now. like I said, I don't really play Minecraft too much, but it's just got some cool stuff that I've never seen before. Like a lot of the things that you build and things you have to research require energy. And so you can either use a lot of your different resources that you've crafted in order to like power those machines, or you can set up things like, oh, I'm going to set up a satellite on the roof of this building or something that will like draw power from the sun that will then it's cool, a lot of cool like crafting building.
I mean, yeah, that stuff lifted straight from like city builders. That's
Yeah.
just power management from those, which at least they've
But
implemented
power
it in a nice way.
Yeah, but power management in like a crafting sort of thing in a sci-fi setting is just really interesting to me. Not to say that it like hasn't been done before, but it's the first time that I've done it and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And it's pretty well done here as well.
Yeah, and most of the other games that do it are pretty indie and a lot less polished than No Man's Sky is at this point, I think.
I remember when polished and No Man's Sky did not
Yeah.
go together.
Yeah, those
at
used to
all.
not belong in the same sentence, but they're doing pretty well now.
Which again just speaks to like I really, it's like I've gained so much respect for the students. Like, wow, these guys are actually really talented. They're really good at what they do, clearly, because they took something that was just a hot mess with maybe a few bright spots of like potential,
It wasn't
and they
even
just
like a
turned
hot
it
mess.
into
It was like a
something.
lukewarm puddle.
Yeah.
Puddle is the best way to describe
It
the
really
launch, to be
is.
honest with you. But no, and they've turned it into something remarkable in especially considering where it started from. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm just glad to see in general games getting post-launch support. And I'm really hoping that happens for Cyberpunk, as a lot of people
better.
probably are. Of
I'm,
like,
I'm sure it will.
yeah, I have a lot of faith
Very
that the devs at least are very invested in the game and want to make sure it's the best thing possible.
And they have a history of good like post-launch support, technically speaking, as well. Obviously,
I mean, with one game, like that's the reality with CDPR. Is a lot of the time people say they have a history of something. It's just The Witcher 3.
It's literally they made one
Um,
really cool
right?
game.
But you know, it's still something to consider. It's not something to just
yeah, but it doesn't
toss
mean
aside.
like you should have blind faith in them. I think is the difference.
No. But that is not like like a grounded like set expectation, but based on that, I'm hopeful is what I'm saying. All right? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think everyone is, but it just keep those hopes in check is more what
Yeah.
I'm meaning.
And that's fair. I agree.
Because I think that's the big reason why so many people are disappointed, and especially people playing the PC version of Cyberpunk that are disappointed in it, is just because they had expectations that were never going to be met.
Yes. And
And
we
yeah.
talked about that a little bit last week.
We did.
Yeah, but I think for me, so for games that like I've been playing recently that are really just having good times, I went back to Animal Crossing for a brief bit, and gotta say that game's still very fun. It's got a lot of new stuff that isn't really that new, and that it doesn't really do anything different than the base game, but it just looks cool.
It's Christmas time.
You know, I don't have a problem with that, so I'm okay with just getting some nice Christmas decorations or holiday decorations because it's a little bit they attempt to not be too conforming to one specific culture or anything. But
I
yeah.
haven't seen a single menorah.
Well, I mean, they try to stay away from that imagery usually.
Oh yeah.
Like they Animal Crossing used to never even have like a lot of what you would consider cultural things, especially from Japan, which is weird considering it's a Japanese dev team. New Horizons has been getting a lot closer to that. Like there's a bunch of Japanese themed items in the game now, but
Oh yeah.
it certainly depends on the entry in Animal Crossing that you play because some of them don't have any of that stuff. But yeah, it's been fun, as well as getting ludicrously back into Monster Hunter Generations again, which is a game that a lot of people didn't play a lot because it came out after World in the West, at least the Switch version. So people didn't give it a lot of chances because it looks way worse than World, but it's a really, really good game and holds up super well, despite it looking like a 3DS game.
I have a question
Yeah.
because like people who are like hardcore Monster Hunter fans like always seem to just like insult World because it made everything so much easier And like I've only played World before, so like how different is like what would be considered a normal Monster Hunter game if World is like the
It's really not that
easier
different. I think most of the if you find fans of Monster Hunter that are like really big fans of the series, they probably really liked World, but World doesn't have the sticking power that the older ones had, because the big thing for me is that World has a few specific mechanics that are universal that kind of dictate the best way to play. So like in World, you have this thing called the Clutch Claw, which is basically a grappling hook, in Iceborne at least, that allows you to
Clutch
like,
move.
yeah, it's a special move and it's super flashy and fun to use, but you can use it to slam monsters into walls. And when you do that, they get stunned and drop to the ground and instantly enrage, which means they become a lot more aggressive, but they also take a ton of damage. And that becomes the best strategy to every single fight in the expansion because of that. Whereas if you can do that on a monster, that's just the best thing to do. Whereas with Generations Ultimate, there's nothing like that. Like you can kind of play however you want. So it's less that things are like easier or more difficult, but there's a lot more variation in playstyle. Because Generations also has the benefit of, this is where the game gets super complex and also tickles my systems designer brain, of it having, every weapon has 6 different styles you can use, which fundamentally change aspects of the weapon. So like you could have one style that gives you an aerial dodge, or one style that gives you a bunch of special moves. And you have the trade-off of like, if you choose the special moves, you lose out on something that other style has. And there are 6 of them for every weapon. Generally, every weapon only has about like 3 viable options, and the others will just kind of be for fun. But that still means there's like 3 different types for every type of the 14 weapons has all 6 of those. So there's tons of variation. There's tons to do, and there's just a lot of goofy stuff. Like, I think the big reason a lot of people like Generations Ultimate over World is that Generations Ultimate has some wacky designs and like really fun stuff. Like I was just showing the people here, I have a gun lance that's a giant snowman. Whereas World is a lot more grounded and realistic.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a style preference as to which one you like more, but the big thing with World is that they have way less unique designs, which is a huge like driving factor for Monster Hunter, is getting that unique armor set or unique weapon. Whereas World has a lot of weapons that are just like slapped on bone or iron looking things that just have a little bit of a unique twist to them. Whereas like Generations Ultimate has like 700 different sets that are all completely unique. Like every single weapon of the 14 weapon types has over 100 weapons that you can upgrade to use in the end game. So there's tons of stuff for you to do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really not that mechanically different. It's just the visuals is like the biggest change, as well as Generations just has a lot more to do past a certain point.
Yeah, it sounds like it's
yeah.
definitely content heavier than
Well, yeah, it's because Generations is like a celebration of the Monster Hunter franchise. It has all the best like fights from the past games and everything. It was meant to be like this huge anniversary special, so it's like a celebration of all the portable games. Yeah, it's really fun, but it's a different expectation. Like World is a lot more flashy and cutscene heavy and a lot more like modern AAA than Generations would be. They're both really good. Monster Hunter in general is just a good time.
It's a pretty unique like game in general.
Yeah, nothing
There's
quite
not
does
a lot of
what Monster Hunter does, and anything that tries to emulate it usually doesn't really hit the mark.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
And why do
pretty
you,
common.
as someone who's into Monster Hunter, why do you think that normally is? I'm curious because I don't really know much about the series personally.
Well, the thing with Monster Hunter is people tend to think from the outset that it's like an action game. The reality is it's almost like a boss rush kind of
That's
game.
is,
kind of
Like,
the
yeah.
impression that I've gotten. Yeah.
and a lot of people will make clones of Monster Hunter with the intent to make it into an action game, which sometimes works. Like, there are a few Vita games that did that really well. There's a game called Soul Sacrifice that managed to do that, which kind of turned it into this very action-heavy twist on it. But generally, when they do that, they kind of lose the identity that people like the game for, which is that like intense 30-minute battle against a monster that you have to kind of like roam around, collect items, really prep for. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do, and like the gear progression's another thing of just all this really crazy detailed gear progression of deciding what you
I've
want to
heard
build.
I've heard Dauntless is pretty similar, and I've heard pretty good things about it from what
Yeah,
I
I've
remember.
played a bit of Dauntless. It's
Mhm.
a free to play Monster Hunter, so that has all the connotations that you would expect of it being a free to play Monster Hunter,
Yeah.
and that
But does
like
that make it bad necessarily?
the biggest driving force in any Monster Hunter game is almost always aesthetics, because you want to get that cool looking armor set and that cool looking weapon. As soon as you tie those to
yeah.
like microtransactions, I think you lose that essence of what makes the game progression so rewarding. So I think that's Dauntless's big failing point, especially considering that there are new Monster Hunters on the way to Switch and whatnot, and like Generations Ultimate's on Switch now, and it's a really good Monster Hunter game. That there's not a lot of reason, if you have the money to buy Monster Hunter, I would almost always say just go for the actual Monster Hunter and not Dauntless.
Just do it.
And it's also like the Monster Hunter team has been making these games since the start, and at this point they have a lot of experience. They know what they're doing. So
I could see and maybe you can correct me on this, but I can see Dauntless being a good like here like almost like a good kind of dipping your toes in the water of like you're interested in this series in this kind of game, but you're not sure if you'd like it or not. So would you say that like it's a good kind of like introduction, just as like a brief sort of streamlined like here's what it could be?
I would
Maybe
say
we'll find
no for the combat, but yes for the progression. Like if you play
Yeah.
Dauntless and you like how the crafting mechanics work and everything, you're gonna like how Monster Hunter works. But the combat in Dauntless is different enough and a lot more focused on like action than Monster Hunter itself. That like I would almost say if you like games like almost more in the Souls like genre, you might like you might like Monster Hunter more than someone who likes Dauntless.
Ooh, interesting.
And even
Okay.
then, like if you go into something like World like I did, like it's classic. I'm gonna run circles right around the boss and swing, immediately after I press the button. Like no,
Yeah, you
you will
gotta
not
pay
have a good time.
attention.
You need to play. You do not play in any other action game. You play Monster Hunter, and you swing the 10-ton piece of metal that you are holding like a 10-ton piece of metal, and not like your Cloud.
Yeah, well, it also depends on like what weapon you're playing. Because if you are into flashy stuff, there's flashy stuff in Monster Hunter. Like the Insect Glaive is super fast and flashy. So if you do want that kind of thing, you have that option. But most of the weapons are a lot slower and more methodical, and really require a little bit more like foresight as to what you're doing. But I think they offer some really cool progression paths, and yeah, the biggest thing is that progression reward structure is super unique to Monster Hunter, and I don't think there's any game like Warframe almost has a similar progression system of you getting gear pieces and then kind of constructing gear out of them. But like it's a free to play game, so it definitely has that same falling that Dauntless has of that reward structure kind of being undercut by the fact that it's free to play.
Yeah, a little bit.
So yeah, I think Monster Hunter is definitely a good go-to. And Generations Ultimate, it looks stated but plays really well. So even if you just played World and liked it, I would still say give Generations Ultimate a go when you get a chance. It's aged very well in the gameplay department. But yeah, I've talked a lot. Who else has got something?
Well, I have I it starts negative, but it gets positive. I wanted to play more Chrono Trigger, but the Steam port is a Square Enix Steam port. So it crashed every time I opened
Oh,
it. And I got very sad because I'm like 3/4 of the way through the game. Um so I kind of just like gave up on that, unfortunately, because it is such a good game and such a good story. There's so many good characters and interactions in it. Um, so instead, I was looking through just other like, because I don't like to do like more than one big story, especially like JRPG at a time, because
Yeah,
that's just kind of stretching my brain too
it's hard to
thin.
keep track of. There's too much
It's
going
I
yeah.
on.
can imagine.
Um, So I was looking through the stuff that I could play on the PS2, and has anyone here heard of or played a Wild Arms game before?
Oh, I have
I have
heard of them.
not.
I have not had the chance to play them though.
As in
Wild
Arms,
Arms.
the Nintendo property Arms.
Be quiet and don't speak again.
See, that's funny because the first thing that I was thinking of when you were talking, and this is pretty tailored to you, I was thinking Einhander.
Oh, well, Einhander is good, but I didn't want to get furiously angry at how bad at the game I am. So
Oh,
I decided I started playing Wild Arms 3, which is it's for the PS2, and it's a cute little JRPG that's like it's got that anime western setting where like you watch like a spaghetti western and it's just like cowboys, sand, and guys that squint at the camera,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah, but I don't
there's
like sand.
there's some
don't
people
say
that don't
why.
like
Don't say
sand.
why.
They don't like how coarse and rough it is. Wyatt, you are not you don't represent
Hey, he
everyone.
said it, not me.
Um, but like, of course, because it's because it's anime western. Now we got like subtle, like steampunky, like mecha things in there. The world is overrun by demons, but when you fight the demons, you get the PS2 synth whistle over it with some flamenco guitar behind it, and everyone is firing their different kind of bladed buster revolvers at it. It's
Ooh,
really
cool.
awesome. They threw a boss rush at me in like the first like hour of the game, and I was so scared. But then you get all of the bosses that you beat as summons immediately, and you can use
Oh.
them whenever because they're not attached to like magical cost or anything. They just use all of the MP that you have, but you can use them whenever, and you just have to sleep, and then they get recharged. It's pretty fun, and even from like a from like a Wyatt standpoint of someone that doesn't
Oh.
play JRPGs. Not like putting him down, just like
No,
genuinely
I know what you're saying. I know what
it's
you're
yeah.
saying.
Um I was like totally completely sucked in because the game starts as you play one of the characters and then you go on a
That's a
train
good way
and
for a
it's
game to start.
well, yeah, but it becomes important because of how the twist happens, you buffoon.
Oh.
Oh.
um
Oh.
Oh.
and you get on the train and then you go to a car that has a piece of treasure in it, and while you're getting shown what the treasure is, three other people jump onto the screen and all point guns at each other, and that's the character select screen, and it was
That's
sick.
amazing.
It
Oh.
was
Wow.
awesome.
That's
Oh.
so good.
Oh. Another
Fantastic.
thing added to my ever-growing list.
I, I
That
I would
reminds
Oh
me of like
no.
the character select screens in the Romancing Saga games. That's very fun.
it's just so much personality.
Yeah, I think that's a good reason PS2 JRPGs were really in an era of their own.
Oh yeah, they're all like they're somehow different and the same at the same time.
Yeah,
It's weird.
they all have the same little weird elements to them, but also a sense of style that kind of isn't found in a lot of games today.
It's weird, just like the way that I feel like AAA is kind of moving beyond like turn-based things for
Hey,
RPGs, like
play
even like
Yakuza like a dragon.
well, I know, but like Final Fantasy is like something that I talk about with a bunch of people, just like out of out of important podcasty settings, and it's like it'd be cool if they had another turn-based one of those that was like a mainline one, but they will probably never do it again because it's just people expect like more ARPG style things, and that just lends itself to an entirely different level of gameplay that is just not the same
Yeah,
as a turn-based one.
I will say I think Final Fantasy VII Remake has the best way to do
Yeah,
turn-based in real time to appeal
definitely.
to both audiences. But yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I would like to see some more pure turn-based games as well. Because I think Yakuza 7 is like the only one from this year that is high profile doing that.
It's the last of a dying breed.
Unfortunately. I mean, even like new indies that came out this year, not a lot of turn-based ones that aren't like that are done. Played a lot of demos, but not a lot that are done.
And even Haven has a weird turn-based system
It is weird.
because
Did
I
you?
think they said they wanted it to be very pick up and play, which turn-based is usually not. So I think that's why it's the way it is. But I'm not a huge fan of the way it is personally.
I played like an hour of it, and then at the end of that hour, I realized that, oh, this is a turn-based RPG that I had no idea it was more than a fun little exploration game from the first like 45 minutes that I had played.
Oh,
It came as a surprise that I first thought was like really like negative. Like, why would you not make it a little more obvious? But like I because my girlfriend and I want to play it. I have a little more faith in it. I don't know how far you got with it, Ryan, but it could
I
be
got
interesting
a
if
little.
it's
I'm gonna keep playing it for sure because it's not like I think it's bad. It's just it's not giving me the complexity that I tend to
mm,
like in a turn-based
it,
system.
yeah, it's definitely simple.
But
I
then
think
again,
it's
like I'm the
more.
kind of person that plays Monster Hunter and Warframe, and I like numbers a lot. So, so I think it's certainly not a knock on the game. It's just I tend to prefer a little bit more crunchiness
Mm,
to my tactics and turn-based systems that Haven isn't really trying to provide. So it's not. I don't knock the game for that. It's just certainly in when I play turn-based games, that's not what I play them for.
it seems more like where JRPGs kind of have like the balance of gameplay and story most of the time. Like Haven seems to be like a lot more weighing into the story thing because you're like finding out what happened with the characters and stuff.
Yeah, which
And
is
the
why I'm going
gameplay
to keep
system.
playing it because it's not
Yeah.
forcing me to do the combat enough that it's really a problem. The
I
combat's
mean, yeah,
not like it's not too long, which is often a combo and a combat issue with bad JRPGs.
there aren't even like random encounters. It
Yeah,
does the chrono trigger
oh,
thing where you can see
huh.
them on the screen and you have to run. You have to touch them basically, and then the
Oh, that's
battle will
good
start.
stuff.
It
Oh,
is
then
good,
I
yeah.
might maybe enjoy it.
And honestly, why if that like because I had also after a while random encounters get really annoying.
Dude, I can't stand it. I really can't.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. It's really hard
yeah.
to
There's a
find a game
reason
that
we
just
don't
has
do
the
them
balance
anymore
right.
in pretty much any game.
It's
Yeah.
just like random encounters mixed with turn-based combat is like the biggest one of the biggest like turnoffs for me in any video game. It's just a horrible combination in my
The
opinion.
last thing that I will say about Wild Arms 3 is that it also has a cool system for random encounters because it has them, but you have like an encounter meter gauge that as long as it has some points left in it, you see like an exclamation point come over your character's head, and that's like, okay, something is trying to start a random encounter with you. And if you press, I think, circle in time, if you still have points left, then you can just skip it and it will not happen. So you can just run through
Interesting.
big areas as long
That's
as you
really
have
cool.
that gauge full. Yeah. And your gauge gets refilled by doing battles or like sleeping and stuff, so it's not even hard to build it up again.
That's a neat system. I like that because that gives like a sense of danger if you're staying out
Yeah,
for too long.
exactly.
Go to sleep, fool.
It's like that
Get your
classic
rest.
D&D rest thing of how long can you continue fighting until you need to stop.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something I definitely really like. All right. Anything else? You got crazy, or are
No.
we moving on to Alex?
It's Alex's turn.
I've been enjoying listening to you guys talk about the games. I forgot what we were talking about.
Just what
Besides,
games we've been playing that have
What
been
have you been
enjoyable.
What have
playing,
we been
Alex?
vibing
in the
with?
playing. Okay, I thought we were still. I thought we were doing a second round of the going back to relax games.
Well, I mean, that's
Oh.
what I've been playing. Like, I'm talking about Monster Hunter because I'm playing Monster Hunter right now. It's like that's the game I've moved on to after Cyberpunk. So,
Because you've already finished. Oh my god. Anyway.
Oh, what's another one when I'm in this very transitory period other than Cyberpunk, and I just don't want to talk about Destiny right now.
Understandable. Because
Oh
this is a
no,
positive vibes episode, so we're not going to include that trash here.
I have one. Alto's Odyssey,
Oh,
Ooh,
I've
good
been
mobile
meaning to
choice.
game.
play that.
Good choice.
Very, very soothing.
I don't know
I
what this game is.
I regret calling it soothing, but that's how it feels. It's a God, what's the best way to describe this? A 2D like downhill
It's an
sledder.
endless runner, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's that,
Ah,
but it's very relaxing. It's
It's
it's a lot. It's a lot about like aesthetic and flow. So if you think of something like um, Journey, in a lot of ways, is about its like flow of game design and its like
yeah.
beautiful
actually speaking
aesthetic.
of Journey, it very much has that art style, but in 2D.
Yeah,
It does
I
look
would
like
agree with that.
that.
Yeah, it's a really, really
Yeah,
cool game.
yeah, smooth music, smooth movement, and I guess quote unquote action just feels good.
It's got that. It's really good at inducing that kind of flow state of just thinking about what you're doing, getting locked into that mindset of I just want to be Alto.
It's a
That
very vibe heavy game.
that
Is the
that one
best way to
finger
describe
control
it.
too is
Yes,
yeah.
for a mobile game especially, that's very important.
Thank God.
If you can get that one, if you can get that just single tap kind of control scheme down,
So
good
elegant.
stuff. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's also that's a game that's been offered a few times in the Epic free games. I think at least once.
Really?
Yeah, because I own it and I know I did not buy it. So
See, I wouldn't want to play it on like PC though. I feel like it's a perfect fit for mobile. Because if I'm sitting
Yeah.
at my PC, I want to play something more
yeah,
substantial.
that's true.
But an Alto game, because there's been several. An Alto game is just perfect for like, oh, I'm gonna wait for the shuttle or something like that.
It's a calming time waster, which can be dangerous.
Yes.
That's a good way to put it. I think calming time waster.
But is
Alright.
it wasting time if you're having fun with it?
No, no, it's
Aw.
not.
Because
That's
like
what this episode's
understand
about.
I understand the point of calling something a time waster, but I've never liked that term because it's like if you're having fun doing whatever it is that you're doing, then like
I mean,
don't
video
call it
games
a
are
time
time
waster.
wasters. Like, if we're
But
using
it's
that
not.
term,
But
that's literally anything you do.
yeah, but that's kind of what I'm saying though, is that it's like if you're
No,
finding
I'm agreeing with
value
you.
out of
I'm not
something, yeah,
disagreeing with you.
yeah,
I'm making the same argument.
sure, yeah.
It's just
It's
like
a very
it's anything you do recreationally is technically a time waster. It's you're just sitting there wasting time, but you know you're not going to be working 30 hours a day, hopefully. So
No, but video games, no.
Capitalism.
With video games, you're really wasting your time.
okay,
rot in your
mom.
brain. Yeah, I think
You know,
that's
tax. This is what we're doing for a living.
Oh boy, that's a whole other can of worms.
Ugh.
What have I gotten myself into?
But yeah, I think we've got some good games on the list. So we've talked a lot about what we're playing recently, which means what have you been missing? What's a game that you want to play that you haven't played yet for whatever
That we
reason?
haven't played yet, or that we haven't played in a while.
That's like either. So it's something that you like
Okay.
to play that you haven't
Bug-free
played in a long
Cyberpunk?
time.
Oh,
Man, that would be great. I mean, for me, it's The Witcher 3. Like, Cyberpunk has made me want to go back and do a Witcher 3 full run because I never finished the DLC.
Mhm.
I don't think I even started the DLC because I finished the game way after the DLC came out and then just never got around to doing the DLC. So
Same.
I
think
want to go
started.
back and do
Excuse
it,
me. I think I started one of them and I just never finished it. Definitely want to go back and finish.
especially because I've heard that they're really good.
Oh,
So-
what I
finish
played
it.
was
Please finish Blood and Wine.
what
It
I
is
played was excellent.
magnificent.
What's the other one? There's Blood and Wine and there's
Hearts of Stone and then Blood
Hearts
and
of
Wine.
Stone.
Blood
There's a
and Wine.
section. There's a section where you go to a. I'm not gonna spoil much. There's a section where you go to like a garden party.
Oh
The Hearts of
yeah.
Stone, and I
Oh.
was laughing the entire time. Not in a no, not in like laughing at it. I was laughing with it because it's this very humorous, like, and very lengthy section of the game. Like it takes a good, 20 minutes if you want to go and do all the interactable
I
stuff
will
in that
say
area. It's so good.
I have never gotten the hang of Gwent. I love it as a concept, but
I've never gotten it either.
I have had to save scum my way so long to try to get that one mini game in the garden party.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I do not.
They sell physical Gwent cards and like
Dude,
boards for
I
card
kind
games,
of
but they're
want
like
them.
$200+.
They're just super expensive. Like if they weren't that expensive, I would totally want them.
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine how popular that would be if it was less expensive?
I have a feeling it's like they wanted to produce them as a collector's item. 'Cause I don't think the game Gwent was really initially ever designed to be a real game. It kind of strikes me as a thing
Yeah.
that like just kind of became popular in a way that they never really expected.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm curious to see if they do anything more with Gwent in the future aside from just the weird Gwent game. I guess
Oh, yeah,
they
Well, yeah,
did
they have
make
a whole-
The
Thronebreaker.
Witcher just Gwent.
They made Thronebreaker as well, which is The Witcher but only Gwent with a full
Oh,
story.
yeah. Yeah, they have The Witcher but only Gwent, and they have The Witcher but only Gwent with a story.
And to be fair, Thronebreaker is actually really good. I've played a decent portion of it, although Gwent in it works a little bit differently and is a little more complex to like warrant a full game. But yeah, Thronebreaker is actually really good. It is always dirt cheap. It's a great like Switch game if you want a good weird RPG for your Switch.
I might be looking into that then.
So who else has got something that they've been meaning to play for a while, just haven't yet?
Playing well,
Sorry,
if
what?
we're still talking about games that we miss, which is something that we want, playing Cyberpunk again makes me think, man, I just want another classic BioWare RPG to like sink my teeth into. You know, that
Yeah.
kind of structure of like you have a hub where you can go talk to people and do upgrades and stuff, and then you go out on like missions in kind of linear levels, right? That kind of like RPG structure is something that I really, really miss. Like Mass Effect. And I want more of that in my life.
Yeah, there's really nothing filling that hole.
And like Cyberpunk is close because it's really very much about like going on missions with these different characters and learning more about them, which is what I really loved about Mass Effect and Dragon Age. But it's not the same, you know? Especially when you have something like Mass Effect that's an ongoing series and you have that like by the time you get to the third game, you're just completely like it's like watching a Marvel movie marathon and then you get to an
Oh,
Avengers movie. You're just completely
ooh.
amped up. There's all these characters that are coming back and it's really exciting. And I
You know,
just
Wyatt,
time.
I gotta recommend Yakuza again when you're saying that,
Yep.
because that's
know,
like
I
the
know.
only series that has managed to do that aside from like Mass Effect recently, of it being lengthy enough to really nail those character interactions.
Yep. I missed that because it was funny, right? Because like I got into Mass Effect kind of over the summer, so I'm very new to the series, but I did play all of them, and there's just that feeling like I don't know how to describe it other than it's like when I watched Infinity War opening night, you know, playing through Mass Effect 3 because it's just
Yeah.
it gets so hype sometimes, you know, and I just miss that feeling of like, oh, this is like the third part in a long going series of all these characters that I know.
The culmination.
I will say
Yeah,
you may want to
exactly.
try out a Final Fantasy game at some point.
Are there returning characters in Final Fantasy games?
I mean, well, Final Fantasy games are generally long enough to get that on their own.
Yeah.
Like if you go play Final Fantasy 12, that game is the length of like 3 other games.
And I have
Yeah.
played Final Fantasy before. I played 15 and I regretted it.
That doesn't
Well,
count.
so did everyone else who played 15. So, and that one also removed everything that people liked about the narrative structure of other Final Fantasies.
Oh, why would they
Um,
do that?
well, because they wanted to
Right.
try something new. Like I don't knock them for trying something new, but
I
it
can
didn't
respect
work.
that.
It did not work, and I'm glad
Yeah.
that seven remake has shown they are stepping away from that. In fact, I'd say 7 remake is probably the closest you're going to get to that sense of like an ongoing series that's going to be building to that kind of moment.
Well, I mean, if
Um,
I'm not spoiling the end of 7 remake, but oh, that's begging for a part 2.
oh,
It
it's
clearly
coming. Like
needs one.
it's coming. We're definitely getting a part 2 and probably a part 3 and maybe a part 4.
Yeah,
Would be
people
my
have been
bet.
saying maybe a part 4.
And then a collector's edition.
Because yeah, the weird thing is Sakurai directly said Sakurai in that presentation directly spoiled a lot of the ending of Final Fantasy VII
Well, I'm glad I didn't watch the
when he showed
direct then.
Sephiroth. But he also said at the same
Goodness.
time that like this is not how the remake is gonna play out. So I think he had some insider info.
Oh yeah.
I'd be pretty
And-
sick if he did.
and just like leaked a little
I
bit.
will say, as much as I like, goof on turn-based whatever, and it's not really turn-based, but I've been passively interested in 7 remake from the.
Well, 7 Remake's an action game. It's like
No, I know.
not turn-based
It's
at all.
it's just like, I, it's this combination of like, I don't know how much, if I can play an entire anime game, just because it's really not my like
I think you will be surprised by 7 Remake. The
thing.
most anime
Okay.
thing about
You
7
you
Remake is
understand
it's
you understand
I get
my
you.
because I played the demo and I was like, I'm gonna give it these opening minutes or however long that was a chance. Like I want to, because I am interested in that combat system because it seems very interesting. And I was just like, yeah, it's just got a lot of those like little things if I'm watching an anime that just bug me, and like things that aren't horrible in isolation, but things that kind of stack on top of each other and kind of snowball for me. You know,
Your
and I was
tolerance
just
for
noticing a
JRPG
lot of
tropes is
that.
low.
It is, and I apologize for that. And I totally understand and accept that that's my fault, and not so much the,
Aw.
you know.
Well, it's like different
wouldn't
people
call it
enjoy
Ace
different things in
fault.
games. Like for me, a lot of aesthetics don't really make a difference in games. Whereas I can play something with an art style I hate unless
It
it's like
does for me
unless it's
if it takes
super
me out of
egregious.
it does for me if it takes me out of the story or the emotion that's going on in a scene at all. And I feel like that's how it is with a lot of like JRPG slash anime types of things that you see, where it's just like it's distracting for me in like the drama of a scene. I don't know. But again, my tolerance is very, 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 very to like, the Earth's core low. So
That's deep, man.
You should
Ugh.
play Chrono Trigger.
I don't know a thing
Alright.
about Chrono Trigger,
Did
but
anyone hear
anyway.
that? That sounded like a ghost. It
I-
was like
Oh
a
yeah,
lamp
that
or
was
something.
totally
Whispers in the wind.
the
Hey, don't
ghost
say
of
that about yourself, Brett.
Oh.
Don't call yourself that.
the ghost of
Oh.
JRPG's past is come to.
That's I'm the I am the what I was about to say Scrooge McDuck. That's not his actual name.
Scrooge
I'm thinking of the Disney version. Oh my
Ebenezer
goodness.
Scrooge?
Thank you. I'm the Ebenezer
You
Scrooge
can't
in
even
this.
say it.
No, I like the
Dude,
Scrooge
I'm
McDuck more.
so
Wyatt,
I am
question:
the
Are
Scrooge
you
McDuck in this scenario. What's up?
question? Wyatt, are you the Patrick Stewart Ebenezer or the Jim Carrey Ebenezer?
Oh, Jim Carrey. It's not even a question.
Mm.
Not
Oh my,
even a
that
question.
protruding chin! My God.
Yeah, I was gonna say why I have no doubt about that. You are the totally him, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like before that, Alex had something he was primed and ready for.
Games that we have yet to play. It is staring at me. Right next to Cyberpunk on my hassock, right next to the PlayStation. God of War 4.
Oh yeah.
I have yet to
Oh,
break the plastic on it.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
yeah, that's an amazing game.
To me, that's like if you're a PlayStation owner, it's a must play. Like it's just one of those games you have to pick up and play. You
You're
owe
just
it to
missing out
yourself
if you
as
don't. Like
yeah.
robbing yourself of
You
something
are
very good.
insulting yourself and just doing yourself a disservice by not playing it. in my
I
opinion.
insult
Stop. I
myself a
know
lot
I do
in
that.
this.
Stop.
But yeah, it is a great game. God of War is something I've been meaning to go back and replay at some point.
Ooh,
Hopefully,
It's
whenever
one of
I
my.
manage to
It's
obtain a
replayable?
PS5.
It's yeah, it is because there's some kind of light sort of like there's some diversity in like builds and stuff like that because there's different armor and different gear you can take that can change your
Sweet.
play style.
I'm also the
And
kind of person that's played Dark Souls like 8 times, so
I haven't been able to finish the first one once.
or at least Dark Souls 3. I've played like 8 times with different builds. So I am if
Try.
I like a game and it's got a good combat system, I'll go back just to enjoy the combat system. And God of War certainly has that. Like it's got a really really punchy,
Ooh.
impactful system that I think a lot of games try to replicate but really can't.
it hits like a truck.
And man,
like
that
it's got
Leviathan
some
axe.
impact.
Ooh.
It's probably one of the most satisfying melee weapons I've used personally. And I'm
Saying a
not
lot
like the
because like
biggest
God of
melee
War
guy.
also used to have the Blades of Chaos, and like
Yeah.
that's a big bar to pass, but they
Yeah.
did it. Like Leviathan Axe is a worthy successor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that game definitely nailed what it was doing. So
And
you
it had a
owe
really
it
great
to yourself to play it.
creative director at the helm too. I do think Cody Barlog is probably one of like the most talented people working in the industry personally. Just based off of everything that I've seen behind the scenes and what he was he was heavily involved in
All
everything
right,
as like a
Wyatt,
creative.
I gotta correct you for one final time
Oh,
because you consistently say Cody Balrog.
I know.
It's Corey Barlog.
I know.
I never knew
sorry.
he was in the Lord of the Rings.
He
He
was
killed Gandalf.
Oh.
that was great. The second half of that I really just didn't see coming. So all right.
There's a lot that just happened there, and I'm not entirely sure I'm all caught up on what just happened. But
Yeah, Corey Balrog, really good director of games. Also, back to the weird Dark Souls thing for a second. I learned a fact about Monster Hunter very recently that the director of Bloodborne also worked on the feline like Palico companion cat thing part of Monster Hunter.
What?
Oh,
We're like, you
okay.
can't get more different than those two
I
things.
know.
Okay, you said feline, and you had me scared about the cats moving for a second.
No, he
They're
did
like
like
the most adorable little things.
they're incredible. He did like the Palico farm bit of one of the games and like
Miyazaki
designed
did?
no, not him. It's like the
Oh,
one of the directors of Bloodborne who did some important stuff. I gotta find his actual
Yeah.
name, but it's not Miyazaki. It's Miyazaki was like the creative director, but it's one of the people that worked on the combat, I believe, who was
That's
very
insane.
high up there. But it was this weird situation of I learned that recently. I was like, what? Because he worked on like the most childish, amusing part of the game too, not like the combat or anything. On the part of the game that is very kid friendly.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I just think it's a fun little fact.
Like,
Yeah.
what is life without surprises?
Who's got something else? We still got like 10 minutes left, so we can talk about like one more set of games.
I want to play Elden Ring, even though I don't know what it is yet.
Hey, positive vibes.
Nope. Elden Ring isn't
Wait.
happening. George R. R. Martin just evacuated the studio with all the topless elf drawings.
Yeah, that was the con. That was the long con. He wrote a whole game and just to jump off at the end. But
I appreciate the dedication to the bit.
my
A real master of the craft.
my actual want is, and I said it before. I alluded to it with my great sense of storytelling and world building. I want to finish Chrono Trigger because I was like 3/4 of the way through, like right after. Ryan, have you played it?
Of what? Which game?
Chrono Trigger.
I've played the first half of it.
Okay.
But I played the mobile port, and my patience for mobile portness ran out
Yeah.
about then, and I was like, I
Oh,
need
I was
to
thinking
play
about
this on
getting
like
the
an
mobile
emulator version.
The Steam is like the mobile port, but it
Well,
it
the mobile
turns
port
itself
works
off for
perfectly
you.
for mobile, but like I really hate playing games on my phone. Like I despise it with an
'Cause it's
intense passion.
It's a game meant to be played with a controller too.
Yeah,
so,
there's
like,
no
it feels-
tactileness to it, and it's
You
also
gotta
like
get a
I almost
mobile
always have
controller.
the option of either pulling out my Switch or sitting down in front of a TV and playing something there, which is much
Yeah.
more enjoyable.
You should
yeah.
emulate it. But I got someone listening to this will have played Chrono Trigger before, and I have gotten to the part right after the thing happens, and I'd want to see what happens next, but I can't because I can't play the game because it keeps crashing, and I'm sad.
That's
Sounds like another
rough.
another game that we've been playing recently.
Yeah.
Mm,
I will
something
say
And
I
it's
did get
called
the
Cold War.
I mean, yeah. I did get the chance to play something a little bit weird, and by a little bit weird, I mean a little bit bad, recently called Marvel's Avengers,
Oh.
where I found a
Oh.
physical copy for
Oh.
$15 with shipping included, and I was like, at
Oh.
that point,
It's
Oh.
they're just
I
giving you the
have to
game.
try it. So I gotta say,
No.
the campaign is actually good. I'm enjoying the
heard.
campaign a lot. For
Oh.
the issue I have, I don't like Kamala as a character as much as people have liked her before. She's a little too Marvel nerdy for me
Hmm.
because she's
a
like,
fan insert.
and the
You
fact
heard
that
it here first, Ryan doesn't
someone
like nerds.
someone legitimately wrote out that Tony Stark's internet password was "I am Iron Man," and that made me upset.
No.
I don't blame you. That sounds stupid.
That made me very upset. Excuse me. So that's the big negative in the story so far. But they did a lot of tuning
for
between the
sake.
beta, like because Wyatt and I played the beta, and we had overwhelmingly negative experiences.
I still remember the headaches. I get a headache just thinking about my time with that.
Oh,
Yeah, it
what?
was
Wait, what was
awful.
going on with headaches?
It was just like so low frame rate that you couldn't.
Oh,
Well,
that's
here's
bad.
and the other thing too. We were playing on PS4, or at least I was, and there was low frame rate. There was just visual effects going everywhere. There was so much motion blur that it made me sick to my stomach. Like legitimately,
bad.
I had to stop playing because it was just too much motion blur and I couldn't tell what was going on. It was bad. It was really bad.
That's an oopsie. It's a big oopsie.
A little bit of an oopsie. A little bit of a uh-oh.
Yeah, that's. But the rest of the game is actually pretty good now. Like the characters have good movesets, and Hulk, they tuned him back in the campaign to where he feels good.
Thank
Like
God.
he's ragdolling
Finally.
people again, and I'm like,
Yes.
thank you. It's what I wanted.
It's the only thing that Hulk should ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
It's-
the game isn't as bad as it was in the beta for sure. I still would certainly not recommend it anywhere near full price. But yeah, I did figure out what it is that the Monster Hunter staff. It's not just that it was the staff. It was actually developed by From Software. They developed Monster Hunter Diary Poka Poka Iroh Village,
What?
which is a Monster Hunter
That's a
spin-off
title.
game for the PlayStation Portable and Nintendo 3DS that is entirely about just having a village of felines, of your little palicos.
That is hilarious.
That's wonderful.
So not only was it just one staff member, it was From Software developed this game
That is amazing.
in the Monster Hunter series. I love From Software made some weird games. All right,
Oh yeah, before
Oh.
Dark Souls or Demon Souls happened, they made some weird
Do
they
you
made
know-
stuff.
Metal
wanna know
Wolf
something?
Chaos. Like
You want to know something they made? They made what the heck was that Connect game called where you were in like this mech but you controlled all of the Connect and it was just
probably
completely
an Armored Core
unplayable.
game spinoff is
It
what
was-
I would bet.
Something like that, but it was a game where you're in this like giant four-legged like mech tank thing and you controlled the entire thing via the Connect, which means it was completely
Oh.
unplayable.
Oh, I looked it up. They have a Connect version of Steel Battalion.
Yeah,
Oh
they do.
my
What?
god.
Here's what the thing is, looking into that game, it's actually super interesting. And I feel like if the Kinect controls had actually worked, it would have been really, really cool. Because they have this whole thing where you work with a squad in order to keep your tank running. And what can happen during missions is that your squad can be attacked by like outside forces or parts of your uh, uh, tank start blowing up, and they can die in battle, and then they're replaced by like randomly generated squad mates. So you get different
Oh.
people with different personalities. if you die.
Permadeath.
Do you
It's-
know
it's-
of the normal version of that game, Wyatt?
No.
It's
There- there is a-
ridiculous.
There is a normal version of that game that the controller for it is a
It's over 40
desk.
buttons. Yeah.
Yes, it is a
I have heard
desk.
about this.
That is
No
the way
way.
this is
Steel
meant to be
Battalion is
played.
insane. Look up that controller if you have the time because it's crazy.
But
I
that's
didn't know they
it's
reduced
actually
it to a
super.
Connect.
But it is super interesting.
Use your body.
Well, because what people often don't know is that FromSoft like got a lot of their name making mech games.
Yeah, they did.
Really?
Armored Core.
Yeah, they
Wow.
made all of Armored Core, which is they made Metal Wolf Chaos, which is incredible.
The greatest game of all time.
Chrome Hounds. They did a Gundam
These sound
game.
metal.
They did
God, they've
Steel
got-
Battalion. Like,
Whoever titles their video games needs a raise. These are some of the best video
also,
game
I want to
titles
point out we were
I've
talking about
ever
the Monster
heard.
Hunter game, the cute Monster Hunter game. I want to point out this game came out after Demon Souls. Like, it's not like they were working on this way before.
Oh,
No, they were. This game came out in 2010, and then they remastered it for 3DS in 2015. So this is recent.
That's beautiful.
time for an upgrade, boys.
Yeah, I just want to point that out because it's so fun to me that FromSoft makes this like super dark medieval fantasy series, and then also just makes this cute little Monster Hunter game about cats.
Why not?
It just
You gotta
doesn't click in my
diversify your
mind.
portfolio.
I cannot imagine some of the 3D modelers' portfolios.
Yeah, I don't know.
my.
It must be a mess.
I feel like Brett would probably agree with me, but one of the games top of my list for games I want to play that doesn't exist yet is Armored Core, the next one.
Please,
And
God.
There have been
Can
some
it be
pretty
called that too? Can that be the official name?
Armored Core, the
Armored
next
Core,
one.
The next one?
Yeah, why not? After Metal Wolf Chaos XD, I don't know what else, where else we could go. But yeah, there are heavy rumors right now that FromSoft, and there might be a confirmation somewhere that they are working on an Armored Core sequel. Armored Core 6, I think it would be.
Yeah,
But
unless they do a spin-off again.
I believe they have confirmed that they are working on an Armored Core game, but whether or not that's going to come out isn't like a real. We don't know yet, but.
They have to finish Elden Ring first.
Well, yeah, the reality is they probably have multiple dev teams at this point. I wouldn't be
They do.
surprised if FromSoft has like 2.
Brett, are
dev
you
teams.
excited about Elden Ring? I didn't know this about you.
No.
Pained.
No,
no.
Brett's like not anymore.
Because I think
Not after the accident.
the thing you're referencing, Ryan, is that like I think at some point Miyazaki said they have like 3 games in development, like after Sekiro came out.
Yeah, they confirmed that they had multiple games in development and that one of them is a mech game.
Yeah.
But they haven't confirmed if that's Armored Core, and they have not confirmed if that game's gonna come out. Because like, as people see all the time, games get canceled, they get changed. If they're not making a good Armored Core, we're not gonna get an Armored Core. Like, I'm sure FromSoft has a quality standard that they're gonna keep up to.
See, real quick, Alex, not even development hell, just development.
Just yeah.
Sometimes
They're
Just how it
synonyms
is.
at this point.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
I think we've covered most of this of our like wish lists of games and games we like. So, any closing
Please,
thoughts
Santa.
on these from anyone else? What do people want from Santa this year? What game? what pipe dream game do you want from Santa?
can I go
okay,
completely
games. I was gonna
out
say
there?
pay my mortgage.
I'm gonna go completely out there. I want a differently cut version of Last of Us Part 2.
It's not that
re-edited.
out there.
What color dragon do you want?
That's what I want.
I want a Wyatt. You know what I want?
What?
I want Sakurai to take a nap, and I think that is more unrealistic than what you just said.
Oh boy.
That's my Santa wish list. Just let Sakura
That
rest,
poor man.
please.
Let him
Santa
sleep.
comes into his like chimney. He just hands him a pillow and a blanket, and some Nyquil.
Rest, my child. You've earned it.
All right, Brett,
The NyQuil has no effect.
you got a Santa wish list game.
You got me wanting a new mech game. There just aren't enough of them that aren't like quite frankly
Also,
chunky messes.
While we're talking about mech games, I gotta shout out a game called Phantom Brigade. Just came out on the Epic Store in early access. It's made by Crypt of the Necromancer's devs. It is a tactics strategy mech game about time manipulation. Really
Oh.
fun.
Wow.
Oh, that's
Alright.
that's so tropey, and I love it.
I will get good at tactics games to play it.
Well, it's also not a normal tactics game. This game is weird, but it's really cool. All right,
Is it
Alex.
ISO?
It's not ISO. It's you play it on a timeline. So instead of turns, your actions are on a timeline,
That's pretty cool.
and you can see what the enemies are gonna do. So you get to you'll have your shield up for 2 seconds, but you got to place where those 2 seconds are in the timeline of like an 8-second window to see to make sure you're blocking when the enemy is shooting at you.
That's
Brett,
insane.
It's really cool.
It's future sight mech super hot.
Yeah,
God.
the
See, I
concept
tried
of
to
it
think
is
about
that you're
that. My brain just goes, oh.
yeah, the concept of the game is that your mech squad has a stolen piece of technology that briefly tells the future.
Of course.
So you see the next like 8
Of course.
seconds in time that you can plan your timeline on. It's really, really cool. It's an early access right now, but it's shaping up to be really good, and it's the Necromancer devs. So
Yeah.
That is
I have
100%
faith in them.
absolutely metal.
Yeah. Alex, you got a Santa wishlist game?
Oh, ooh, yeah, a new Professor Layton.
Oh.
I'm falling back on that. I mean, they have so we the series has switched over to Layton's daughter at this point, and we have no idea where the professor is. He's missing. Um,
So you got a cliffhanger ending.
yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. Oh, much more of a cliffhanger ending than you think. There's Yeah, I thought I was reading some things about the game, trying not to spoil the ending for myself. Um, but wow, yeah, they were talking about how, oh yeah, we're scaling it back. There's not gonna be as much world-ending terror as there was in like the third and the sixth games before. We're scaling it back. You're just gonna be dealing with small town problems. Um, and it's not world-ending terror twist, but my God, I need a new one. Stop porting it to the Switch. I need a new Professor Layton game. I need to know. Level 5, why would you do this?
Yeah, that's rough. At least for my wishlist game would have been the World Ends With You sequel, which we're getting. So I'm pretty happy right now. But
Lucky bastard.
pipe dreams can come true. All right.
Must have used a birthday wish on it.
We
It's a
have
Christmas miracle.
hit that point of the show where we do shoutouts, which means we're going to do shoutouts and then we're going to end the show like the show normally does. So, Wyatt, what's your shoutout?
Kind of mentioned it briefly, but No Man's Sky's soundtrack. I've been listening to it a lot, both while I'm studying because I think it's really great study music, and also just casually as well. I think it's this really interesting kind of blend of like kind of glitchy techno sound effects and like guitar, and it's just it sounds so interesting and unique, and I love it so much.
All right. For me, I just got to shout out all the devs working during quarantine right now, because especially during like the holiday period, because I feel like a lot of work from home stuff is going to mean people aren't taking as many breaks, just for the sake of like they don't have someone actually oversighting that they don't.
That's a me problem.
Because something a lot of people don't know about crunch is sometimes it's not the executives doing it, it's devs just wanting to work more in the game and no one tells them no, so they do it.
Because we like it, and then
Sakurai,
we
are
end
you
up to
listening?
not sleep
When
for a
you
week.
you need people to tell you no, or else your stuff's gonna be not as good. So just hoping that people are taking care of themselves during this. All right, Brett, what you got?
I don't think I mentioned this last time, but my shout out is to the tradition that is called 25 Days of Last Christmas, in which no one does this except for me and a few other people, by the way. Um, so December 1st, you listen to Last Christmas once. December 25th, you
Oh
listen to
no.
Last Christmas 25 times.
Oh no.
So I made the mistake of missing a day about halfway through the month at this point, and I had to
Oh,
listen to it
no.
like 30 times in one day.
Oh no.
That's
Oh, that's
incredible.
torture. That's not a challenge.
It's like waterboarding. All right.
It's a challenge
I
of your
know.
sanity
All right, Alex, please get us away from Brett's hellscape.
from whatever that was.
All right. Shout out to the 15 pounds that I'm trying to avoid gaining over, making so many holiday-related meals from all of the
Nice.
cookbooks that I've accumulated.
Good man.
Yeah, that's a good plan. All right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. As always, Tuesday mornings. Find us on any podcast platform of your choice or YouTube.
Is that
Ta-da!
You can talk during the outro. I was
Happy holidays.